Let's go back on the record. Is the audio better back there now? Okay. Let's go back on the record. 19 CF 7518, State v. Johnathan Quiles. I have counsel of the State Defense and Mr. Quiles present. Any reason why we can't bring the jury in, State?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense?
No, Your Honor.
Bring the jury out, please. Is there a noise? Mike, there's a static noise up here.
Yeah, there's feedback, Judge.
Your Honor, the jury returns to the court.
Members of the jury, welcome back. We're going to continue with our trial. You guys may have a seat, of course. State, you may call your next witness.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. State would next call Alberta Vaye.
Ma'am, good afternoon to you. Just watch over here to your right. Watch your steps as you come forward. If you need a glass of water, let us know. We'll do our best to accommodate you. Okay. I only ask if there's an objection made during your course of your testimony. Just pause for a second. Let me rule on the objection, and then you may continue from there, okay?
Yes, sir.
And you can adjust the microphone as you deem necessary.
Okay.
Ms. French, you may inquire. You're ready.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Alberta Vaye.
And will you please spell your first and last name?
A-L-B-E-R-T-H-A for my first name. My last name is Vaye, V as in victory, A-Y-E.
Thank you, ma'am. And where do you generally live?
Jacksonville, Florida.
And how long have you lived here in the area?
My entire life.
And how old are you?
20.
What do you do for a living?
I work for Duval County Public Schools.
Are you a recent high school graduate?
No, ma'am.
When did you graduate?
2021.
Okay, so about 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago?
Yes, ma'am.
And what high school did you graduate from?
Sandalwood High School.
And where did you go to middle school?
Arlington Middle School.
Did you go all 3 years there at Arlington Middle School?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you get to know someone in particular that became one of your best friends at Arlington Middle School?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was that?
Ayanna Sawyer.
And did you all have classes together in middle school at some point?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it an instant friendship?
Yes, ma'am.
However, the two of you, did y'all go to the same high school?
No, we did not go to the same high school.
And did she go to Terry Parker?
Yes, ma'am.
However, even though the two of you no longer went to the same school, did you maintain that best friend relationship?
Yes, ma'am.
And how would the two of you communicate?
Through social media or texting.
Would that include Snapchat?
Yes, ma'am.
What about Instagram?
Yes, ma'am.
And I think maybe earlier on, was there a different app the two of you would use?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was that?
Kick?
That's something more kind of in the past?
Yes, ma'am.
How would you describe IS?
Like, as a friend,
Yes, how was she?
kind, funny, just a joy to be around.
Now, did IS and yourself have a small, close-knit group of friends?
Yes, ma'am.
And could you tell me who those other friends were?
Haley Shempert and Marie Logan.
And did you all meet in middle school or elementary school?
We all met together in middle school.
Now, as part of being one of the closest friends of IS, did the two of you ever discuss boys?
Yes, ma'am.
And I say boys because I'm thinking about a time when you guys were younger, so.
Yeah.
Did you ever know during your friendship for IS to have a boyfriend?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was his name? That IS told you.
Jose?
Did you ever meet this person, Jose?
No, ma'am.
Did this person, Jose, go to Terry Parker High School?
Not to my knowledge.
What about Sandalwood High School?
Not to my knowledge.
And I think, did you ever meet Jose?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever see a picture of Jose?
No, ma'am.
Was Jose ever described to you in physicality?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was that?
He was described as looking like he was mixed and being Hispanic with dark hair.
Did you know how old Jose was?
Like early 20s.
Did you know if Jose had children?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know if Jose is that person's real name?
No, ma'am.
Now, through your friendship with IS from middle school through high school, did the two of you ever go to each other's home?
No, ma'am.
And why is that?
We just never really found time. Every time we tried to schedule, it would be a conflict on either end.
Had you ever been to IS's home, just at least for a visit?
Not for a visit, but one time to pick her up for a field trip.
Had IS ever been to your home?
No, ma'am, I don't believe so. Or I don't recall.
Was a lot of your friendship based upon either at school or using cell phones?
Yes, ma'am.
How often do you think you would talk with IS?
Basically every day.
Now, besides this person, Jose, did IS ever discuss any other males?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that a person by the name of Kamar?
Yes, ma'am.
Was the relationship that IS had with Kamar the same as the Jose?
Yes, ma'am, in a way.
And what do you mean by in a way?
Her relationship with Jose seemed a bit more intense, and her relationship with Kamar seemed more sexual.
And when you say intense, does that mean like in love with the person?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall the first time that IS had ever brought up the name Jose to you?
Sometime around 9th grade year, I want to say.
And what about the person by the name of Kamar?
Somewhere around 9th or 10th grade.
Now, had you ever met Kamar?
No, ma'am.
Had you ever seen a picture of Kamar?
No, ma'am, I don't recall.
Now, were you friends with IS's younger sister, SS?
Not friends, but I knew her.
And was that just a kind of acquaintance through IS?
Yeah, it's kind of like she knew my brother, but they weren't friends.
But your friendship was with IS?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you meet SS through IS?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, at some point through your friendship with IS, did you learn that she was pregnant?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you learn that?
I learned she was pregnant sometime in 10th grade year. I can't remember the exact time frame. Somewhere around my birthday in November is like that, but I don't remember like the exact date.
In fact, in November of 2018, did you celebrate a special birthday year?
Yes, ma'am. That was my sweet 16.
Did you invite IS to come to that party?
Yes, ma'am.
And did she come?
No, ma'am.
And is that about the time frame that you found out she was pregnant?
Yes, ma'am.
So would that have been the month before she left Terry Parker that day?
Yes, ma'am. That was the month beforehand.
Okay. So we're talking in 2018, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't want to assume anything, so thank you, ma'am. Through that conversation, I'm only going to ask specifically, did IS tell you who the father was?
I don't recall her specifically saying who the father was.
Did you ever ask?
Yes.
But you don't know what an answer was?
Through that conversation around my birthday, no. If we talked about it beforehand or afterhand, I do remember her saying who the father was, just not during my birthday.
Oh,
if that makes
okay.
sense, yeah.
I'm sorry. Let me ask you, at some point in time, did IS tell you who the father was?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry for my vague question there.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. And who did she tell you?
Jose.
Prior to IS leaving school that day at Terry Parker to never be seen again, do you recall last time that you spoke to her?
A few days before.
And do you remember how you spoke to her and like in what type of communication method?
Through social media.
How did you learn that IS was missing?
I got the text from her sister saying that she hadn't gotten on the bus that day.
Did you try to reach out to IS?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you successful?
No, ma'am.
Did you help to try to find her?
Yes, ma'am.
Any luck?
No, ma'am.
So one moment, Your Honor. So I have one last question for you, ma'am. Since 12/19 of 2018, have you had any type of contact with IS?
No, ma'am.
No further questions. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Ms. Vaye.
Good afternoon.
All right. Bear with me one moment, please. All right, to start out, if you could tell me, you talked about talking and conversating with IS. Did you use Snapchat with IS?
Yes, ma'am.
And did your other friends also use Snapchat to communicate?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that the most common app that you used to communicate with your friends or between your friends?
At the time in like high school, we used Snapchat. In middle school, we used Kik.
Okay. So at the time around 2018, Snapchat was the main app that you all were using?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to talk to you about Jose just briefly. You described Jose during direct examination as being mixed.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you mean by mixed that he was mixed with Hispanic origins and something else?
Basically, or like kind of black and white or Hispanic and black, but mixed with something.
Okay, understood. And that description, that's the description that you got from IS, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did she describe that person to you when you all were in the 9th grade?
I believe so.
So I want to ask you a little bit about him. Do you recall her telling you his exact age?
I believe so. I recall her saying he was like 20 or 21.
All right. And I know you said on direct you had never met him, you never saw a picture of him or anything like that.
No, ma'am, I never saw him.
Did you ever speak to him on the phone or message with him or anything like that?
No, ma'am.
And did IS at any point in time ever tell you that Jose was some sort of code name?
I don't recall.
Did you at that time believe Jose to be the real name of the person who she was in a relationship with?
I want to say yes. I'm sorry, I don't really recall at the time. That's just the name that we used, so it's like 50-50, because, you know, sometimes, like, especially in middle school, you would use a code name for a boy that, like, you liked. So, I believe so. I'm sorry.
That's okay. If you don't remember, you can tell me you don't
I
remember.
don't recall. I'm sorry.
No problem. As best you can remember, do you specifically remember ever saying this is a code name or anything like that?
I don't recall.
Okay, thank you so much. And as far as you know, she always did call this person that she was in a relationship with Jose. She never used any other name.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You said that she told you that she was pregnant, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And she also told you that Jose was the father.
Yes, ma'am.
Did she ever mention anyone else she thought may be the father?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I know you talked about around your birthday and that being like November time period.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And this is around shortly before your birthday, shortly before IS went missing. Is that correct?
Like my birthday was before she went missing?
Correct.
Yes, ma'am, it was.
And just the month prior.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall having some conversations with her where you weren't able to she wasn't able to come to your birthday party?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that because people had learned that she was pregnant and there was kind of a lot of drama going on and people upset about that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. As far as Johnathan Quiles, prior to this case, before IS went missing, had you ever heard that name?
No, ma'am, I don't recall.
Did you know who he was in any way?
No.
Had you ever talked to him, seen him, or anything like that?
No.
Had IS ever told you about Johnathan Quiles?
I don't recall.
All right, to the day that IS actually went missing, you found out that day, later that day, that IS had not gotten on the bus and no one could find her.
Yes, ma'am.
At that point, did you assist in trying to locate her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what did you do specifically to try to help locate her?
I tried calling her, and I got sent a flyer saying that she was missing, so I shared that with family and friends.
All right, and then how did you share that?
Through social media and text messaging.
And did you do that on like your Instagram, Facebook?
Yes, ma'am.
On both platforms?
On Instagram. I don't use Facebook.
Fair enough, thank you. I know Facebook's probably outdated, so on Instagram you actually did share like a post basically asking for information of where she was?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall anybody giving information as far as, hey, I've seen her, or anything along those lines?
I do recall.
You do recall that?
Someone giving me information, yes, ma'am.
Did you follow up on that?
I asked them about it.
Okay, and did they give you information about where she might be or where they might have seen her?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
Do you recall what you did with that information that they provided you?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you do?
I recall, I believe, telling her mom. I'm not 100% sure in my recollection, but I do remember telling an adult, probably either her mom or the police or both.
About someone having seen her that day?
Hearsay at this point regarding what someone else stated.
Sustained.
The information that you received as far as that you provided to police, did you personally follow up in any way on that yourself?
No, ma'am, I don't recall following up.
And did you ever have any conversations or anything like that with anybody about that location of where she was seen?
Objective hearsay again.
That's overruled. She's following up. It's not an out-of-court statement. Go ahead, counsel.
Could you
May I
repeat
answer?
the question, please?
Of course. Did you ever have any conversations with anybody following up with that afterwards?
The person who said they saw her.
You did, in fact, speak to them.
Your Honor, this whole lot is supposed to be hearsay.
Overruled. It's not an out-of-court statement she's not asking for.
I did ask them where they saw her.
Thank you. And they provided that information to you, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Outside of that, did you also communicate with IS's family about where she might be?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you specifically speak to SS, her younger sister?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you and SS kind of brainstorm where she might be?
Not really brainstorm, no, ma'am.
Okay. Do you recall an individual that you were trying to locate named Brian or Brandon?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And was that a phone number? Was there a phone number attached to that person that you were trying to reach them on?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you actually call this Brian or Brandon person?
I don't recall calling.
Okay. Do you remember, if I were to show you or tell you a number, would you recall if that was the number that you received as being his?
I might not recall the phone number, no.
Okay. If I showed you a contact that has a photo on it, would that help you to remember if that's the individual that you tried to contact?
Yes, maybe.
Might.
I'm sorry, it's been so long.
It's okay. If I may approach, Judge.
Sure.
And I'm going to go back to the podium to ask the question.
Okay.
All right, I just handed you a screenshot of a phone number and a photograph at the top. Do you recognize that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and what do you recognize it to be?
I recognize this to be a screenshot that was shared when we were looking for Ayana.
And how do you recognize that?
I believe it was a phone number that was given to me, and then I tried looking for it or calling it, because at the time I had a Samsung, and you could do that.
And is that an accurate representation of what you received and the number that you called at that time?
I believe so.
That phone number, do you mind reading that number?
904-626-6942.
And the photograph of that person that's on that, do you recognize that to be this person, Brian or Brandon?
No, ma'am. I never knew a Brian or Brandon.
Okay, is that who you believe that person to be?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Your Honor, at this time, the defense would move. I'm so sorry, I don't have it off. I can't recall the number they had.
Any objection from the state?
Well, Your Honor, we actually didn't, we didn't stipulate to this, so it was defense exhibit C.
Any objection?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
That objection, mark it as, that should be defense 1 then, I believe?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, mark it as defense exhibit 1.
All right, after you tried to make contact with that phone number, did you speak about that with IS's family?
I don't recall.
Do you recall maybe attempting to try and call that phone number from a different number to see if they would answer?
I don't recall.
Fair enough. Outside of what you've described to us as far as trying to call it and looking up the number to see if you knew, if you had any other contacts with that, did you do anything else with that?
With the phone number?
Yes.
No, I don't recall.
Okay. Did you ever provide that information to police or tell them about that?
I don't recall. I'm sorry.
No problem. Now I want to talk to you about a little bit about IS and the conversations that you may have had prior to her going missing. Did you, were you aware of IS's plans to leave town with Jose or whoever?
No, ma'am.
Did you guys ever have any conversations about her running away with Jose?
No, ma'am.
As far as Jose goes, you said he was about 21 years old, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Or 2021, I believe you said.
Yes, ma'am.
And you guys would have been how old at that point?
15, 16.
All right. And at that time, you didn't approve of that type of relationship?
No, ma'am.
And you just thought he was a little too old for you guys being as young as you were at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
And you actually expressed that to IS, that you thought, you know, this guy's just too old for you at 20 or 21.
Yes, ma'am.
As far as Kamar Humphrey goes, at some point do you recall telling police that Jose was Kamar Humphrey, the guy that lived across the street from IS?
No, ma'am.
You don't have any recollection of that?
I don't, I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you know, I know you said you'd never seen or even seen a picture of Kamar Humphrey, but did you know about the relationship between Kamar Humphrey and IS?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you aware of the incident that occurred in late February, early March, that was reported to police?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you become aware of that situation?
Ayana told me.
And did she tell you that her mom had called the police and reported this incident to them about what happened with her and Kamar?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you know IS to continue that relationship with Kamar Humphrey following that?
No, ma'am.
Do you know if they ended the relationship after that?
I don't recall her saying they ended it.
And as far as you know, that wasn't just a one-time thing. There was an ongoing relationship between them, whether it was just sexual or more. Were you aware of an ongoing relationship between them?
I don't recall being aware of an ongoing relationship.
So as far as you know, it was just that one time.
I believe so.
All right, and I just want to follow up with one other thing. After IS went missing, do you recall telling SS to tell her mom about Jose?
Yes.
Did you tell SS, hey, tell your mom that she's in a relationship with Jose and he's older?
Yes, ma'am.
SS didn't know what you were talking about.
Yes, ma'am. That's what she said.
You didn't go into any details with her about who Jose was or anything like that when she said she didn't know what you were talking about?
I don't recall that part. I'm sorry.
She didn't make any sort of indication to you that she knew who Jose was?
I don't recall. It was just like one conversation.
And all you can recall from that conversation is that SS told you basically, I don't know what you're talking about as far as who Jose is.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, just a moment, please. All right, after you found out that IS was pregnant, did you guys ever have any conversations about her wanting to get an abortion?
I do recall.
You do?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was just making sure I heard you correctly.
I'm sorry.
You do recall having a conversation with her about her wanting an abortion?
I do recall having a conversation about her getting one. Wanting one was like not wanting, but like deciding about it.
Okay. Did she talk to you about asking for money from her grandmother for that?
I don't recall.
Do you recall IS ever telling you that Jose lived across the street from her?
No, ma'am.
Do you ever recall IS telling you that Kamar Humphrey got her pregnant?
No, ma'am.
Nothing further.
Any redirect? Ma'am, it's good to see you. Have a good rest of your day.